Welcome to the English with Kirsty podcast from www.englishwithkirsty.com. Here I'll be sharing with you tips, information and other learning resources so that you can improve your business English. Hello everybody and welcome to English with Kirsty, and this week we are continuing our theme on looking for jobs, applying for jobs, and we're going to be speaking specifically about interviews. I wanted to interview somebody who's had a lot of experience as the interviewer, because then they will be able to give you some useful tips about going to interviews and what to do there and how to deal with certain problems. So I'm speaking to Natasha Reddrop this week, and if you want to find out more about Natasha, I've got the information about her and the link to her website on the show notes page, and you can find that by going to www.englishwithkirsty.com/podcast/episode 19. So first of all, I'll tell you a bit about Natasha and then we'll go into the interview. So Natasha Reddrop has been working in human resources, mostly in learning and development, for nearly 15 years. Her most recent role was managing a graduate program in which she had to recruit 20 people each year from an application pool of 2,500. Her recruitment experience has mainly been with professional groups, lawyers, accountants, IT and business commerce professionals. She currently operates a business writing consultancy from her new home near the beach in New South Wales, Australia. Okay, so now you know who she is. Let's get on with the interview. Hi Natasha, thanks for joining us. I was just wondering, to start with, can you tell us 3 things that people can do to prepare for an interview?
Okay, so I think 3 important things that people can do to prepare for an interview are to research the company, to think about possible questions that they might be asked in the interview based on the position description, and also to think about some examples that they could use. So I'll just talk a little bit more about each of those things. Researching the company can be difficult, and obviously the website is a good place to start, but if you can go further than that, maybe look at the company's LinkedIn profile, have a look on forums where people might be talking about the company, or anybody that you know that works there or has ever worked there. That extra preparation is really valuable, and the person interviewing you will probably be able to tell that you've gone a little bit further with your research. Thinking about possible questions that you might be asked is important, and you need to look at the position description, I think, to get a bit of an idea about what kind of skills are important for the job. So, you may be able to tell by looking at the position description or the job ad that you're going to have to do a lot of writing or a lot of phone work, or perhaps teamwork is very important. So if you can see that those things are standing out, you can probably predict that the interviewer is going to ask you a question about one or more of those things. And thinking about that in advance is just going to make it a little bit easier for you when you get into the room. Leading on from that, you should also have a look through your resume and think about examples from your resume that you might use to answer those questions. So if you think that there's going to be a question about teamwork, what are the examples that you can find from different jobs that you've had or different situations that you've been in that you might want to use to answer that question, and note them down, because sometimes you can't think clearly on the spot, and if you've noted down a couple of ideas beforehand, it makes the experience run a little bit more smoothly, and you can be a little bit more relaxed.
Okay, that's great, thank you. So you're someone who's had a lot of experience as the interviewer. Can you think of some things that people have said or done that ruin their chances of getting the job?
I have had some instances of people saying or doing things which definitely jeopardise their chance of getting the job. One that springs to mind that is really easy to do actually is to use the wrong company name. And this is probably more likely to happen in the written application stage rather than the interview, but it does happen in the interview. And sometimes it's not just a slip of the tongue. You can tell that the person has been going to a lot of interviews and they are actually just a little bit confused about which interview they're doing at the moment. So obviously that's not a good look. Another thing that looks bad is if you somehow imply that this particular job is going to be a step towards some other role or some other organisation. So the interviewer doesn't want to hear that you are only using that job as a way to get another job. Even if that's how you feel about it, you should never say that and you should never give that impression, because chances are you will just get crossed straight off the list. And another thing I think that's quite important is if the interviewer asks you why you want to work at that company or why you want that particular job, talking about reasons that are practical and important to you might not sound that good. So the first thing that you mention about why you want to work there probably shouldn't be that it's close to home or that the hours are convenient, because that doesn't convey to the interviewer that you're really interested in working in the company. It makes it sound like you're only interested in your own needs and that the job is just going to meet those in the short term. So you may want to mention those things, but I don't think they should be the first thing that you mention when asked why you want to work at that company or why you want that job.
Yes, those are definitely some things to avoid. And I think something that people worry about as well is what to do if the interviewer asks a question but they don't know the answer, because I think they think this will lose them points as well for not knowing the answer. So how would you advise people to deal with a situation where the interviewer asks a question, but the person being interviewed doesn't know the answer to that question?
I guess it depends on whether you actually don't know the answer or you don't understand the question. If you don't understand the question, I definitely think you should ask the interviewer to repeat it or to say, could you please ask that question in a different way? And that's a perfectly legitimate question to ask. Just get them to rephrase it or check by rephrasing it yourself and say, is this what you're asking? If you are asked a question and you don't know the answer, for instance, if the interviewer asks you about something that you haven't done before, I think it's best to be honest, but perhaps try to draw on another example of something that you've done that's similar, and also indicate that you are, very keen to learn and that you would look forward to the opportunity to learn something new. So be positive about the fact that it could be a new skill that you could acquire, and that you're happy to learn to do new things.
Yes, I definitely agree there that honesty is the best policy. I remember being in an interview and the interviewer asked a question and I had no idea what to say. I didn't know the answer and I was honest, and at that point I thought, okay, you've just lost any chance you had, because I just had to say I don't know, but then I followed it up with, but I'm willing to learn, and then gave some other examples of what I'd done in similar situations, and I did get that job, and I was quite surprised because I thought that was quite an important point in the interview where I just had to be honest. But I think that was better than the alternative, because the alternative would have been to have pretended that I knew, and I knew I couldn't do that convincingly. So I think it's better if you don't know something, as you said, just to be honest about it, but make it positive, but don't try to go down the road where you try to pretend that you have experience that you don't have, or lie about something, because you'll probably get found out, if not immediately. I don't know. I think interviewers can see when people are trying to do that a lot of the time, particularly if they've been doing a lot of interviews. So, as somebody who's asked this question many times, what are interviewers looking for when they ask, why do you want this job?
When interviewers ask, why do you want this job, which I think interviewers often, that is a very common question that interviewers would ask, I think what they really want to hear is that you have taken some time to think about the role and the organisation, and that you actually have an interest in working for that organisation. I think that's really important, an important way to help you stand out from other candidates. Now, we all know that when people are looking for jobs, they're applying for a lot of different jobs, and they're not necessarily singling out a particular company and that's the only company that they want to work for, because that isn't realistic. But if you can convey to the interviewer that you have thought about the company, that it fits in with your overall career plan to work in a particular industry or to have a particular role, or that it's a natural progression from your previous role, or that it makes sense for you to move in this particular direction. So if you can convey that that you have actually thought about it, that you want to work at that organisation, and you can articulate some reasons why, I think that's quite impressive, and helps you look like a candidate who's keen to fit in with the organisation and be part of the team.
Okay, so once you've done all your preparation and you're as ready as you can be, there's still the problem that you feel really nervous. How would you advise people to deal with these interview nerves?
Everybody gets nervous before interviews and during interviews. I think that's natural. You've got at least one person and sometimes 2 or 3 people asking you questions. Sometimes they're friendly and sometimes they don't come across as particularly friendly. So I think that if you are really nervous, going back through your notes that you've made in preparation for the interview and reading back through your resume and or your application letter is a good thing to do while you're waiting. And when you actually get into the room, I actually think that admitting that you're nervous can be good, because the interviewers will know that you're nervous, but they actually want you to do your best and they want you to be as relaxed as possible, because interviewing someone who's extremely nervous is quite a nerve-wracking experience for the interviewers as well. So they're not going to enjoy interviewing you if you are really anxious. They want you to be able to tell the best, most effective stories about your experience. So if you tell them that you're nervous, that can help to kind of break the ice, and they can also, show that they want you to do well and help you to relax. If you feel the nerves overtaking you during the interview, I definitely recommend taking just a couple of moments to have some deep breaths and just say, is it okay if I just think about that question for a moment? Because taking a pause is perfectly fine. And I also think that, if they offer you a drink of water or a cup of tea, say yes, because having a little drink of water or a little sip of something can be quite a good way to calm down, and it also just gives you a moment to stop and think. But it's very natural to be nervous, and I really think it's okay to say that if you feel really worried about it affecting your performance.
Okay, last and final question is, where can we find you online? So I will put this on the show notes page, but if you just let us know, where can we find out more about the work that you do?
If you would like to find me online, I am at www.grammardebugged.com.au. Thanks, Kirsty.
No, thank you. That's been really useful. So thank you for your time and the advice that you've given here. And as I said earlier, if anyone wants to have a look at the show notes page, it is at www.englishwithkirsty.com/podcast/episode 19. And you can click through onto Natasha's website, and I've also left the sign up box if you want the other 20 tips for interviews. You can sign up for that there as well. So I hope you enjoyed this week's episode, and I'll see you again next week. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the English with Kirsty podcast. If you have any questions or comments, my email address is kirsty@englishwithkirsty.com, or you can go to www.englishwithkirsty.com/podcast, where you'll find information about the individual episodes.